So if you haven't realized it yet, everything has changed economically. Last decade was the decade that was known as easy monetary policy, low interest rates, stock markets and real estate markets, crypto, you name it, just took off. We are now in the midst of one of the biggest bubbles in history. Look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has sold more stock in his career, both percentage and dollar-wise, over this past year than any point in his 60-plus year career. Pretty smart dude to listen to and follow. You know, last quarter, he didn't buy a single dime of stock. I don't think he's ever done that in his career. Warren Buffett's actions are telling us what's going to happen. By the way, he did the same thing before 08, 09. He did in 07. He also did it in 2000. So everything you thought about you thought was good the last decade, guess what? It ain't probably going to be anywhere near as good this decade. I shared earlier, all the analysts, they're all projecting S&P 500 returns between 3 and 5% and significant corrections in the next decade.
Hey everybody, thank you for joining us for today's episode of Disruptors. Today we have Ferenc Toth with Your Personal Bank, and Ferenc is another player in the Phoenix area, and he's here to talk about what the wealthy and banks know that you don't. Now guys, I'm on a mission to create 100 millionaires. The information on the show alone is enough to help you become a millionaire in the next 5 to 7 years. If you'll take consistent action, you'll become one. And guys, if you get value out of the show, please hit that subscribe button, leave us a 5-star review. That way we can create more millionaires. You ready?
I'm ready. Hey, Steve.
All right. So right now we're talking about what the wealthy and banks know that you don't. But before you got into this world, what were you doing?
I was in the financial world working as a, IRAs, 401ks, retirement plans, that type of things.
Mm-hmm.
And I kind of stumbled upon it coming from the blue collar world, grew up on a farm, all that. Didn't know anything about this stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And a guy taught me. So I found a mentor.
Yeah.
And I learned really quick, worked hard.
Mm-hmm.
Working on a farm teaches you that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And so I was never afraid to apply. I was always curious, read tons of books. I'm a huge proponent of reading books. I always say you're a combination of who you hang out with and the books you read, right?
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, bottom line is became one of the top retirement planning annuity salespeople in the country,
Mm-hmm.
top 10, multiple years. And then the owner of the company, who was my mentor, got killed in an airplane crash.
Man.
Yeah.
So before you met your mentor, you were doing financial planning, or
No, he was the one that taught me that. So before that, I actually started my very first business. Was a retail plant nursery in Glendale, Arizona.
Okay.
And I only did that because I wrote a book that said, I knew I wanted to be an entrepreneur, but I didn't know what.
Right.
And I talked to my uncle, who was the only entrepreneur I ever knew in my family. And I had an agriculture degree. Again, I grew up on a farm. I'm in Phoenix because I like the weather. What do you do with that?
Yeah.
And he said, well, you know about plants, right? What about a nursery?
Mm-hmm.
Seemed to make sense. And I read a book that said if you bought an existing business, at least you had immediate cash flow. That seemed to make sense to me.
Makes sense.
And so this was back in the days when the Yellow Pages,
Mm-hmm.
I literally called plant nurseries around town and just asked to talk to the owner and say, hey, are you interested in selling?
Yeah.
And I found one.
You were prospecting, found one.
Went to work for that company for 6 months to get to know it, understand, make sure he wasn't cooking the books,
Mm-hmm.
that kind of thing. It was the real deal. Ended up buying the business.
Got it. So it's cash flowing.
It was cash flowing until the Gulf War hit.
What happened with that?
40% cut in gross revenue overnight. And I, of course, max borrowed,
Mm-hmm.
did some owner financing, but still managed to survive a couple of years, but it didn't go well.
Got it.
And you learn hard lessons through those challenges.
You learn a lot of valuable lessons.
I was in my early mid-20s at that point.
So then you learn something different. So you didn't have a financing background. You just owned a nursery.
Correct. And
then what caught your interest?
Literally, I was looking, because again, after the failure of the business, my credit's shot. I don't have any money. And I've got an agriculture degree and I'm in Phoenix. What do you do with that? Like I said. So sales was really my only option. Bounced around a couple different sales jobs. Found out I was actually good at it because entrepreneurs are salespeople.
Naturally, yes.
Naturally. You have to sell your product or business, right?
Your dream.
Whatever it is.
Mm-hmm.
Right. And I quickly realized, hey, this is something I'm good at. I believe in it. And then the idea, they were selling estate planning, trusts, annuities, retirement plans. My dad was killed when I was young, tragically in a car in a drowning accident.
Mm-hmm.
That's always hard for me to talk about.
Understandable.
Yeah, when I was 7. But our family had a trust, and that's actually part of what helped me pay for college, along with the military. So combination of those things. So I knew what trusts were. So I saw this guy saying, hey, we do estate planning, financial planning. And so I applied for the job. It was a sales job. And again, found out quickly it was like a duck to water. And in within a year, I was the top salespeople person in the company.
Gotcha. And you were selling specifically?
Retirement plans, IRAs, 401ks, all the financial stuff.
Got it.
And one quick story is kind of funny is back then, we're going back 25 years now.
Yeah.
The financial world was the wild, wild west. I mean, there really were no regulations. There was no compliance, none of that. And I saw a lot of really shady stuff.
Sure.
And I remember about 6 months in, after I'd kind of gotten my feet wet, knew what I was doing a little bit, I didn't like what I was seeing. I went to my pastor, and it bothered me. I said, I'm considering leaving this field. He said, why? I told him I didn't like the shadiness of it. And he goes, well, are you doing the right thing? I said, yeah, to the best of my ability. He goes, well, you get 2 choices. You can quit, move and do something else, or sometimes, a light shines brightest when it's darkest, right? Maybe you're there for a reason.
Yeah.
That struck me. Because in my training, to give you an idea, one of the things that bothered me is they would teach us, tell people you're doing this for free. You're doing this out of the goodness of your heart, which was a lie. And I raised my hand to the trainer and said, that's not accurate. Why would I say that? Well, I said, I'm getting paid a commission to do this. And if I'm offering a good product and it makes sense to the client and I get paid for it, I don't see why there's a problem.
Right.
Well, that's just not how we do it. I said, well, I'm not going to do that. And they all say, well, you'll fail. Well, again, 3 months in, I broke a monthly company record. 6 months in, I broke the annual company record. Within the first year, I was a top salesperson. Now they wanted to know what I was doing, and they made me the new trainer. So
being honest.
Yeah, just being straight.
Was that the only thing that was like upsetting you?
Oh, no, there was a lot of stuff and that's where, I know we fast forward doing my radio show now, with the compliance of these days. I had a compliance officer listening to every show I aired for the first couple of years.
Wow.
Having an attorney listen to every word you say is an experience that you learn a lot. So,
sure.
Well, I would record the show, right? And then the attorney would listen to it, and then she'd come back and say, well, I know what you were trying to say, but you need to drop this word or this phrase because somebody might misconstrue that. And I'm thinking, wow, that didn't even occur to me. But it was a great learning experience, realizing how you had to clean up your language and all that. So I don't have the luxury of, as I like to say, exaggerate when I'm on the radio or a podcast. Where an individual financial person sitting at a kitchen table, I'm not saying they're lying, but, let's face it, the exaggerations are often made.
Yeah. Yeah, I think...
or omission of the truth. Sometimes the omission of the truth is worse than, you know what I'm saying?
Sure. And I think we have, in real estate school, we had that term, it was puffing.
Yeah, there you go. Sell the sizzle, not the steak.
Yeah, anytime you were puffing, that was an actual... violation. I can't remember what the penalties were. Okay. But they were not good. I think it was criminal.
Wow.
But I can't remember specifically. I didn't have to worry about that.
Now, the good news is in the financial industry, I can tell you, I've been in it 25 years. It's way, way better than it was when I started. It's a lot cleaned up, but there's still stuff that happens.
Yeah.
That's why, but again, from the beginning, I treated people like adults. I said, when I did my workshops, I always would start off with, I'm going to treat you like an adult. We're big boys and girls here. I want to tell you the pluses and the minuses of everything that's out there, product-wise or whatever, because there's nothing that's perfect.
Yeah.
What we need to find is the best option or the best tool. You need a saw. If you're going to, cut a piece of wood, I'm going to try to find you a saw, not a hammer.
Right.
A hammer's not a bad tool. It's just not good at cutting wood.
Not the most effective.
Right.
Sure. So
it's that kind of thing.
You found then just having a simple, plain conversation.
Correct.
Was the key to sales and selling retirement benefits.
I was a guy who grew up on a farm. To me, I was used to dealing with good old boys from Missouri. You know what I'm trying to say? And you just plain talk. Just give it to them straight. Look, here's what I recommend for you and why. Now, here's the catch. I'm going to just tell you the catch up front so you don't have to ask me later.
Mm-hmm.
Because I know in the back of your mind, you're always thinking, what's the catch?
Right.
If something sounds too good.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't think this catch is a deal breaker because
Mm-hmm.
lay it out.
Sure. And then is at this point then that you said you met your mentor?
Yeah. So that estate planning, financial planning, retirement company, that the owner of the company became my mentor, taught me how to.
Oh, the owner of the company.
The owner of the company. It was a small company. It was a startup, actually.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know it. He had only been around like 6 months when we started. Grew into one of the top 10 financial agencies in the country within a matter of 3 years.
Mm-hmm.
We had tremendous rapid growth. And another quick little story about it that's kind of funny. In the financial world, in most places, if you do well, you have these incentive trips you get, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I've been in the business 14 months now. I'm still in my 20s. Now, in the financial world, most guys are 50s, 60s.
Yeah.
That's typical.
Mm-hmm.
So I was way younger than anybody else there.
Mm-hmm.
I'm in Rome. And most of them thought I was the son or nephew or something of one of the qualifiers.
Right.
Well, when they found out I I actually did it myself. I won't quote what some of them said, but it was how in the world did you get here?
Mm-hmm.
I've been working at this a decade, 15 years just to get qualified. How in the world did you get here? And frankly, it was just, again, straight talk, just giving people and not knowing any better. I didn't know I was supposed to not qualify.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I just went to work.
Right.
Talked to a lot of people.
One of the things, and we'll talk a little bit more about financial literacy, but
Yes.
just something you're talking about with the shadiness of the industry.
Right.
For myself, what was eye-opening for me was reading, technically listening to Tony Robbins' book,
Sure.
Money Master the Game.
Right.
And I just felt dirty and lied to my entire life about how mutual funds
Right.
work.
Oh, well, the bottom line, the dirty little secret of Wall Street, and they don't like it when I say this. So advisors get mad when I say this,
Mm-hmm.
but it's a fact. Read Snowball, which is Warren Buffett's autobiography. He talks about this also, which was very impactful for me. We all know that if you invest in a Wall Street type investment, whatever that is, they make money up, down, or sideways, right?
Yeah.
What does Wall Street want? Fees.
Mm-hmm.
And why do they always tell you, well, when it's good or when it's bad or when it's indifferent, they just hang in there. It'll get better. Just hang. Mm-hmm. Because if you go to cash, what happens? They make no money,
mm-hmm.
right? And so even in the book Snowball, like I mentioned, Warren Buffett started out as a stockbroker.
Yeah.
And his dad was a stockbroker.
Oh, I didn't know that.
Yeah. And that's how he got started. So he's involved in the first couple of years. This is in the 50s. Of course, back then, people still remember the Great Depression. So,
mm-hmm.
As he put it, stockbrokers were kind of spit upon. He said stockbroker and then spit back then. Mm-hmm. They were not looked on favorably, right?
That
not
sure
like today.
Changed that different.
Well, there's some, yeah. But his statement was, I just couldn't see. He says, my best advice to somebody was buy a stock and hold it for life, which
mm-hmm.
he still tells us today.
Yeah.
But if he did that, he'd make one transaction and then wouldn't make any more money ever again.
Right.
So I didn't want to put myself, and that's why he started doing developed the model where he makes money if it goes up and he doesn't if it goes down, right? Because he didn't want to be in the position, and neither did I, that if the economy or the markets took a dive, my best advice to you is to get out of the way, avoid risk. It means I'm cutting my own throat, my paycheck at a tough economic time too, right?
Yeah.
I've got a family.
So you're very disincentivized to
right.
be good at your job.
It's tough. And I'm not picking on those guys and gals that do it.
It's just the model.
It's the model. And I've talked to many of them personally behind the scenes. I know them. And they're like, and the other piece of it is they're captive. If they work for, pick a name, they can only offer what that company offers if they go outside of it. So a lot of times I'll introduce them to their personal bank concept, what banks do and all that. They love it. And then they'll go, I can't offer that to my clients because it's not in my package. And if I offer another product, I lose all my residuals. So they got them. It's the golden handcuff.
Right. Yeah. It's
so I feel bad for them in some respects when they realize many of them.
Yeah. And so I think looking at that and then understanding that, like you said, goes up, goes down, goes sideways.
They make money.
And so then you look at like fiduciaries or this or that.
Same deal. I don't care what you call yourself.
Mhm.
That's one of the things I say. You can be a public fiduciary, a voluntary fiduciary. I'm a voluntary fiduciary, which are, in my opinion, better. That's somebody's volunteered to be that.
Mhm.
But it doesn't matter what you call yourself.
Yeah.
You know, if you do a money under management model,
Mhm.
you're getting paid whether it goes up, down, or sideways, and
Right.
you only get paid when it's engaged,
Mhm.
right? That's why I know a lot of people look down on commissions, but I say, you know what? I think that's much more fair. That's how I get paid.
Mhm.
If I recommend a product to you, Steve, that makes sense, and I tell you why, you
Mhm.
like, and you understand the limitations of it,
Mhm.
but overall you think that's the best fit. Oh, by the way, I get paid. I tell people that straight up.
Right.
I can make my living. I get paid well, so don't, you know, I don't regret that. I work hard. I deserve it.
Right.
Company makes money too. If you invest, you want that company to make money. So they make money, I make money, you make money. We all win.
We all win.
I like win-wins.
What was it that you compelled you or attracted you to the mentor you found?
Well, I didn't realize he was going to be a mentor initially. I just was answering a job posting of something that I recognized.
Mhm.
Like I said, I understood trust, estate planning. I'd lived it from my dad passing, being tragically passing away young. So it was something, again, I didn't know this at the time, but reading later, Warren Buffett always says, invest in things you understand.
Mhm.
Well, same thing with careers. If you're picking a career, you want to pick your passion, of course, but you also have to have some knowledge about it, right?
Mhm.
So if you have some knowledge and some passion, I felt like, hey, that's something I could do. I understand it. I've been a recipient of it,
Mhm.
which is probably one of the best education you could have. Somebody's lived it,
Right.
right? So I thought, I could share this with somebody and the benefits of why is life insurance important. I
Mhm.
lived it. My dad died when I was 7. Okay. I can understand the benefits of estate planning. Part of my college was paid for because of a trust that
Mhm.
my parents put in place.
Yeah.
So it was just me telling a personal story, because I lived it.
Mhm.
But we quickly, got to meet this guy. I was impressed by him. He was young, he was ambitious, smart, all the kind of thing. He'd been down the path where I wanted to go. And we developed a really strong relationship. And he became my mentor.
What did you learn from him?
Ooh, a lot of things. Obviously, in the financial industry in general,
Mhm.
all that. But I also learned he was a big dreamer, big thinker, big visionary guy. And I had a pretty good vision, but his was so much bigger than anything. He kind of opened up worlds to me that I didn't realize existed or potential possibilities. And I think maybe that was the inspiration that I got from him.
Mhm.
Probably the biggest.
So what did you see working with him that you didn't see before?
What that I could accomplish so much more than I thought I could.
Mhm.
I had limiting beliefs, like most of us.
Even
do.
when you were top performer, you were
I
still
didn't become a top performer until then.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay, so being around him helped you.
Yeah, because he would. All right. Oh, here's a perfect example. So I remember he would get under my skin. I was like, yeah, I remember I made 7 sales that week. It was a new company weekly record.
Mhm.
He goes, that's awesome. But it's Thursday. You got another day, man. And he was right. And I went and got an 8th sale that week. Okay.
Yeah.
Stuff like that. Or he would say, well, I did the 7. He goes, I did that too once. I got to beat that.
Yeah.
So I had to get the 8th one so I could do better than he had,
Mhm.
Stuff like that.
It was really good at egging you on,
Yeah.
getting you to
But
pushing you.
me, pushing the buttons the right.
Mhm.
I mean, some of it was encouragement. Sometimes some of it was, kind of getting under your skin.
Mhm.
Depended.
Now, before we talk about the personal bank, one thing that you have, from what I can see, passion about is financial literacy.
Yes.
And this is one of the things that is really important to me. And I want to make it, not today, but at some point, a mission to, improve financial literacy across, all ages, right? I think a lot of problems could be solved if we were all more financially literate. So talk to me about today's podcast is brought to you by motivatedleads.com. With them, you can get $300 worth of quality local leads sent exclusively to your inbox by just mentioning my name. I've used them, and they're one of the best producers of solid seller leads on a local level. And they fully guarantee the leads that they send you. To get your $300 free credit, just head over to motivatedleads.com, hit the claim your area button, and let them know that I sent you.
It's not taught in school. It's not taught in the home most of the time. I mean, and I'm not picking on our parents. I mean, mine either. No, it wasn't taught to me. And if our parents knew better, they would have taught it to us in most cases. They just didn't know any better themselves.
Yeah.
Jobs, careers, they don't teach. One of the things I tell people, I say this not to be mean, but if you get an advanced degree, basically, so you're a higher paid worker monkey, right?
Yeah.
That's what it is. And I've said this to people with doctorates, and they look at me and say, "You're right."
Yeah.
So do they teach entrepreneurship in college? No, even a master's in business administration doesn't teach you how to run a business, does it?
I have no idea.
Well, I know I have a number of agents and clients and stuff, friends who have those degrees, and not a word about entrepreneurship. It's one of those things where you either have to go out on your own, or as I stated earlier, and learn through the School of Hard Knocks, which I did some of that over the years.
You did.
And or have some mentors along the way. And that's why I'm a huge fan of mentors. Earlier in my life, outside of that first mentor, and again, I stumbled upon that. I didn't really understand the value of mentors and shortening that learning curve until a little bit later. Now I'm a huge fan of it. But I forgot where we were going.
Financial literacy.
Oh, financial literacy. Yeah. So financial literacy is, again, it's not taught, but it's a basic necessity. I mean, let's face it. You should be learn how to balance a checkbook in high school. Everyone should.
Yeah.
Okay. And one of the things I teach business people, and I learned this from Oprah, of all places. I'll take something from anybody, but love her, hate her, doesn't matter. She's a billionaire. Okay.
Yeah.
She did a show once, and this made so much sense to me. Well over a decade ago, she said, on your business account, have two accounts. Have a income account and a expense account. All your income goes in the income account. When it's time to pay your bills, you figure it out, you transfer it to your expense account. Whatever's left over is what you have left, what you have. You never have to balance a checkbook, but you always know exactly how much you have.
Right.
Simple, basic financial literacy.
Yeah.
I share this with bankers, business owners, CPAs. I've shared this for well over a decade. Almost nobody knows that little simple technique.
Yeah.
But it's so valuable.
So you even have a certification to teach financial literacy.
I have taught a college certified financial literacy course.
Okay. So like when you're teaching these, like what are the most important principles that, someone's listening can go out and use today?
A couple of things from that course that I found, and I think most people found super valuable, is when you're running, people hate budgets. We get it. But understand, if you're short on money, there's several different ways. I mean, you can make more, right? You can spend less, or you can do both.
Right.
All right. And what a lot of people do is they get in this limiting thing is, okay, I'm short money, I got to make more. Well, that might be the solution. Spending less, or open yourself up to all those possibilities. Also, it's about balance. Everybody wants balance in their lives. We all do. But sometimes intentionally, you have to be out of balance on purpose to get back in balance. And what I mean, I'll use a quick example. I had a couple a few years ago that they were struggling financially on the bills and stuff. And we realized that if he took on some extra work overtime for 6 months, they could get rid of those extra bills and kind of straighten out their financial situation. Yeah. And he was very much a family man and all that. And he's like, I don't think my wife will go for me doing overtime. I said, what if you explain to her why? And not only why, but this is not permanent. This is temporary.
Yeah.
He was amazed what happened. Have a family meeting because he had teenage kids and all that. The kids, the wife, everybody got on board because that's part of changing habits. You have to have a support partner, accountability partner to really be successful. It was life-changing. It was, holy cow. Now they were kicking him out the door. Dad, go to work, get this done. Let's fix it. And then they set a goal to do something fun. I think it was a camping trip. They loved doing that. Once he got these bills paid off, they were going to take a camping trip. Well, guess what? The whole family was like, Dad, get out the door, get to work. How close are we? The kids started creating a chart. How close are we to getting the bills paid off so we can go on this camping trip?
Yeah.
He goes, it changed his life financially. It's simple little things like that.
Right.
The second big one is a little more advanced, but it's called positive arbitrage. And I'm sure we'll talk about it a little more, but it's really quite simple. Is one of the things I see the difference with the wealthy and banks and institutional investors do commonly versus the average American is most Americans get money in the door, however that is. We got bills we pay, and then hopefully there's some left over. We might invest some of that, and that's what we try to, that's how we live our lives financially. Well, most of the wealthy don't operate that way. In other words, if they get money in the door, before it goes out on bill expense, because they got expenses too, like all of us, they make sure they receive some benefit from that somehow, at least partially, some control of that money. And that's one of the tools that we teach. I tell people this all the time. If you make 1 or 2%, let's say, interest on every dollar you spent in your household or your business, every day, every year for the rest of your life, would you have more money?
Yes, of course.
A lot.
Right.
And it compounds over time. That's what the personal bank is.
Got it. Well, when you put it that way, it sounds really, really simple.
Yeah.
So what is your personal bank?
Basically a financial concept where we're marrying two financial products, one from the insurance industry, one from the banking industry, to make both better. Okay. Now, some people have heard of like the infinite banking concept, bank on yourself, all those kinds of things, right? It's called a lot of different things.
Sure.
Your personal bank is another step beyond that. We call it like infinite banking turbocharged. Here's what I mean by that. What's taught typically with the insurance banking concept is you put money into a cash value policy, whether it's IUL, whole life, whatever, and you put it in there to grow cash. It's safe, it's insured. If you do it right, it's income tax free. Okay. Those are all good things. Highly liquid. By the way, if you're looking at it, it better be 50% liquid or more day one. If it's not structured right. That's something I run into all the time. The idea is you're growing your money. Right? Highly liquid, you have access to it. Now, what's taught is then you take policy loans against it, and you're hoping there's a difference of what you're earning in dividends or interest minus what you're getting charged.
Right.
Right. So there's a gap. Now, if you read some of the books like Nelson Nash, who's sort of the godfather of the insurance banking concept, and he's passed away a few years ago. I did meet him before he passed, but he's using it like past 70 years, roughly. He taught using the policies because there was a gap. Well, insurance companies have gotten smart in the last, I'm going to say 10, 20 years.
Gotcha.
If they pay more, they're also going to charge you more. There may be a small gap. You might get a half a point or a little more, a little less, but they're going to balance it out each year. They're not going to allow you to have a significant gap between the two for any extended period of time. Well, this is where the banking side comes in. And I learned this from the banking, from lenders. You can do bank lines of credit. Very similar to how most real estate investors or, anybody who's ever done a HELOC, home equity line of credit, understands you're borrowing against, a bank's giving you money because it's got value. That property has a value, right? Well, the same thing here. Steve, if you had cash in a policy, does that have value?
Of course it has value.
Yeah, cash is worth something, right? Will a bank loan against that as collateral? Of course they will. In fact, they prefer it over real estate even.
Easier to seize.
Well, it's easier access. Obviously, it's guaranteed. It's liquid, okay? It's also, a lot of people don't know this. Are you familiar with a term called Tier 1 capital?
I am not.
Okay. FDIC defines Tier 1 capital as the safest capital a bank can invest in, okay? They require all banks to hold about 25% of their holdings, their portfolio, in Tier 1 capital.
Yeah.
Every bank in the country, okay?
In the vault or wherever.
What is Tier 1 capital? FDIC says there's 3 types of Tier 1 capital. Cash equivalents, that'd be checking, savings accounts, things like that, and cash value in a life insurance.
Really?
That's it. So banks have to invest 25% or more of their total portfolio, every single FDIC insured bank. That's a lot of money, folks.
It is.
In one of those 3 things, or all 3 of those things. They are buying these cash value policies by the truckload because they're paying 6% plus guaranteed tax-free right now. What are money markets paying? Or cash?
Not that.
A lot less.
Yeah.
So you see what I'm trying to say. The difference is then banks will loan against this cash in this policy. Bank lines of credit, there's banks that specialize in this. And lending rates are usually prime to prime minus 1. And that's typically lower. In fact, 24 of the last 28 years, we've done the research, the dividends you're earning are higher than the borrowing rates.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you're getting positive arbitrage. Historical average is 2 to 3%.
Yeah.
So I'll go back a couple of years. We were making about 6% dividend. You're getting charged about 3% interest.
Mm-hmm.
What's your money doing, Steve?
I mean, it's growing.
Right. But if you let's say you just use a number and add a zero, take away a zero, I don't care. Let's say you got 100 grand in a policy, cash, earning a 6% dividend.
Yeah.
Keep it simple. You decide to borrow 50 of it. All right. But if you borrow it from the bank, are you taking it from the insurance company or the bank?
We're talking about borrowing from the bank.
Right. See, their insurance banking concept teaches take it from the insurance company, which you've reduced the amount of money there, right?
Right.
But if we're actually getting the money from the bank, all that 100 grand in our examples at the insurance company,
Right.
they're going to pay you full dividends on it, right? Let's say the bank's charging you 3% interest on that 50 grand you borrowed. You're still making 6% dividend on it, aren't you?
Yeah.
What's happening?
You're you get the arbitrage,
right?
And I was gonna say you're eating twice, but no, you're not.
You're not eating twice.
You're not eating twice. So you're getting 6% here. You're getting 3% for really not doing anything.
It's the difference, the spread, the gap.
Yeah.
Positive arbitrage. You're making 6 on it. The 50 you borrowed, you're getting charged 3, so you're keeping the difference. Right?
Right.
By the way, insured, guaranteed, tax-free, highly liquid, all that good stuff. So it just keeps growing. By the way, whether you add more money to it or not the next year, there's more money there to borrow, isn't there? Guaranteed.
Right. Exactly.
Okay. Now, what happened? I mentioned earlier, 24 of the last 28 years, we had a higher dividend than the borrowing rates, right? What happened a couple of years ago with the Federal Reserve?
The rates went up.
They went crazy. Fastest increase in their history, over 100 years.
Yeah.
That's a fact. They overreact. They're nervous Nellies. They drive me nuts. I complain about them constantly on my radio show.
Yeah.
Okay. So the borrowing rates went above the dividend rate, what you're earning, right? Well, guess what? You can still borrow from the insurance companies. Now they're going to let you borrow at about whatever the dividend or interest rate is. So it's kind of a wash. What I'm trying to say is in those 4 of the last 28 years, the years where the Fed went crazy on us, it has happened 4 times in the last 28 years, by the way. We're currently in that situation. I'll share in a minute. It's changing dramatically to our favor. In those 4 out of the last 28 years, you could borrow it, but it was kind of a wash.
Sure.
Okay, so it's not helping you, but it ain't hurting you either. And by the way, that positive arbitrage, Steve, isn't just for this year. Let's say you borrowed that 50 grand. Let's say we get back to positive arbitrage next year, but you haven't paid it back. Still get the positive arbitrage, don't you?
Right. You're still benefiting from it.
Right. And no payment requirements, interest or principal.
I was told, again, I'm not an expert here.
Yeah.
My understanding is when you took the money out from the your insurance policy,
right,
that the interest would continue to grow at the full value, not.
Now, so what they're talking about there is, we're getting technical in the weeds. If you want to, that's fine. It's called direct recognition versus non-direct recognition. Okay. So there are companies that ought to say, hey, you can borrow from the cash in the policy, yes, from the insurance company, and they'll still pay you the full dividend or interest or whatever on the money that's there. That is true. But remember, they're still charging you an interest rate on the borrowing funds. What is that? Again, typically, this is with all companies, going to be similar, let's say within a half a point up or down of what they're paying you.
Sure. That's what you're saying, where the insurance companies have gotten smarter.
Right. That was true 20 years ago. There was a gap. It ain't there. It doesn't exist anymore. So where do you get the positive arbitrage now? Most of the time, 24 of the last 28 years, from the banks. Now,
Gotcha.
So I talked about where we were a couple of years ago, where we are at the moment. Where are we headed? This is exciting. One of the things I've been sharing on my show now for a year is this next decade. You're probably hearing this. It's going to be they're calling it the golden age of fixed investments. I don't know if you've been hearing that term.
I have not.
It's going on everywhere. Wall Street, all of them talking about it. In fact, analysts from BlackRock, JP Morgan, Vanguard, several others, all in the last month or so, have all come out with projections for the stock market for the next decade, 3 to 5% annual average returns.
For the stock market.
Correct. S&P 500.
It's not very sexy.
No. They're all saying, now, This is their business.
Mm-hmm.
They're not going to put that out there unless they're pretty darn confident because they want to encourage people to invest with them, right?
Their one great skill is getting money into it.
Big time.
Yeah.
Why would they put that out there? Why are they saying that? What's the markets? What has the S&P and all that done the last couple of years?
It's done incredibly well.
Incredible. We had 20 plus returns in the last back-to-back years. You know how often that happens?
Not very often.
Not very often.
No.
Like about 8 times in the last 100 years.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. One time we've had a third year where it went up 20% or more. That was, by the way, the dot-com bubble.
Right. It's not generally a good thing if that happens.
Every indicator you want to look at is showing us that the stock market, the S&P, all of it is at extreme levels.
Mm-hmm.
Pick an indicator. I don't care. This is the decade. My prediction, and this is not just me, this next decade will be the decade of fixed assets, the bond market. A lot of people are familiar with the stock market. You need to start learning about the bond market. That's where all the action is going for the next decade. And there's a couple of reasons why. For real estate investors, another point I want to make on that is too many of you pay attention to what the Federal Reserve does.
Right.
And most of the time, you all thought that mortgage rates were going to go down when the Fed started dropping rates, right?
That's what a lot of people think.
I was saying the opposite. Go back to my show. You'll see, and there's a reason why. 30-year fixed mortgages are not based on what the Federal Reserve does.
That's, how do I put this?
This is financial literacy.
This is obvious to those that pay a lot of attention.
But not to most.
Correct.
The 30-year fixed mortgage is based on the 10-year Treasury.
Right.
So take the 10-year Treasury plus 2 to 3 points. So where's the 10-year Treasury right now? About 4.5.
Mm-hmm.
Where 30-year fixed mortgages? 6.5, 7, right?
Right.
And why did the bond market go up when the Federal Reserve interest rates went down?
Not sure.
Most people don't know this.
Mm-hmm.
The bond market is, by the way, multiple times larger than the stock market.
Is it?
Yes. At least 3 or 4 times larger. Everybody thinks the action's in the stock market. They don't have a freaking clue.
Mm-hmm.
Banks, institutional investors, sovereign wealth funds, and all that do not invest primarily, pension funds in particular, do not invest primarily in the stock market. They invest primarily in the bond market. Why? They want cash flow.
Mm-hmm.
See, real estate investors have far more in common with bond investors than stock market investors. Stock investors want appreciation.
Mm-hmm.
Bond investors want cash flow.
Gotcha.
That's the difference. Take a pension fund. What do they want? Cash flow to pay their pensions.
Cash flow and a high degree of certainty that it's not going to go down.
Correct. So consistent banks, that's what they want. Insurance companies, they all want cash flow with high degree of certainty. Exactly. What do bonds offer?
High degree of certainty.
Right. Here's the problem the average American has. You need about $100,000 to go to the bond market. You need about $100,000 per position.
Mm-hmm.
Most people don't have that.
Yeah.
So how do you take advantage? No, you invest in companies that invest in the bond market. Insurance companies are some of the biggest investors in bond markets. That's where the cash value comes from.
Gotcha. I didn't know that. That makes sense though.
Yes. And why are all the predictions that we're in the golden age of fixed assets? And why I'm sorry to say this, but mortgage rates aren't going down anytime in the next few years. And I'll tell you why, with a high degree of certainty. And this is why. What is the bond market telling us when the Fed was lowering rates, but the bond market went up? What were they telling us? They're concerned about inflation.
Mm-hmm.
And they don't think, what's the biggest driver of inflation? Government spending.
Mm-hmm.
Is our federal government spending any less yet?
Not yet.
Not yet. But let's say, and I'm a big fan of Elon and all that they're trying to do, and if they get the government efficiency stuff, which would be great, how anybody could be against having the government be more efficient is beyond me. Okay?
Some hills you're just willing to die on.
Exactly. I don't care what your political beliefs are, but they spend too much money and they waste too much money. I don't think anyone can argue that point. Let's assume the Trump administration and Elon and all that, they do a great job and they get the government way more efficient. Let's assume they even get to the point where they start paying down the debt. Wouldn't that be wonderful?
Yeah.
Okay?
A man can dream.
A man can. I told you, I had some mentors that gave me some big dreams. But let's assume all that for a minute. You don't pay off $36 trillion in debt overnight, Steve,
No.
do you?
No.
That's what the bond market is telling us. They're telling us because there's the last piece of it. So I'll put the last piece of the jigsaw puzzle together. This is something I've been sharing on my show now for the last year plus. I've been doing a lot of education on bonds, treasury bonds, debt, what's going on and why. When the government spends more than it receives, and by the way, last year it spent about $1.9 trillion more than it receives, it has to sell a bond.
Right.
Okay? It can't just print money willy-nilly. A lot of people don't know that.
Mm-hmm.
They just think there's a printing press. No, there is, but they got to sell a bond.
Right.
All right. They're selling record level of bonds, right? There's record amount of debt and there's record amount of deficit spending, which means they're selling record offerings of bonds, okay? So far, pretty much people are still buying them. Who's buying them? Insurance companies, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, the big players, the big institutionals. If you understand Economics 101, when you have a huge supply of something, we're talking human history level stuff. I mean, not all time. Nobody's had this kind of
I think
level.
they're saying like in the last 4 years, we've doubled the amount of money.
Yeah, doubled the amount of debt.
Yeah.
Our debt is doubled. No country in the history of the world has had this kind of debt, these levels. And this is the scary part, and then we'll get back to, there's only actually one society in human history that has had over 120% GDP debt, which is where we're at now, and survived. You know which society that is? Can you guess? Human history.
Human history? I mean, I'm looking at the big ones. It has to be either England or China.
You're close. It's Japan.
Okay.
Japan has more debt than we do, and they're still operating. Now, we'll see if they
have other problems right now with birth rate issues.
Demographic problems. Oh, my gosh, off the charts. Will they survive? We'll see. But they're the only society that's had more debt GDP-wise than we have and survived. Okay? So you have this massive amount of debt, a massive amount of bond selling. The bond buyers, why does somebody buy a bond? Well, they want income. A bond, this helps people understand it. A bond is very much for an institutional investor, much like a CD would be for you and I.
Yeah.
You buy a 1-year CD, they promise you 5% interest for a year. That's what they're doing. You buy a 2-year bond or a 10-year or a 30-year bond, the government's promising to pay you X amount of interest for that time period.
Right.
That's
exactly
simple.
like a CD.
Exactly.
Almost exactly, yeah.
Almost exactly. You pick the time frame, they offer the interest rate. Now, when you have a record amount of selling, what do they got to do? How do they sweeten the pot to get more people to buy?
Lower the price.
They got to raise the interest rate.
Raise interest rates.
Right. They got to offer more interest, which they've been doing. Every bond offer. You watch the bond auctions. They're pushing up. They're pushing up. They're pushing up because
you get more money in.
Because they have so much of it. They got to unload. They got to offload all this and get people to buy it.
Right.
That's not going to change anytime soon, is it?
I can't think of any compelling reasons why that would change.
Again, until when is it going to change, Steve? Is when you start seeing our government debt being reduced. Those are paying down the debt to some more manageable levels, which would, everything working great will take years.
Do we have to bring the debt down? Even if we just broke even, right?
That's a step in the right direction.
Yeah.
And my analogy is this. I think and I've been, sharing that I've been railing on this for now several years. The best analogy I've seen is it's like we're on the Titanic. We see the iceberg. It's dead ahead. Now, if we can continue on this path, we know what's going to happen.
Right.
We're going down. We have time to turn the wheel, but not much more time.
No, every day.
Every day we wait, the closer we get to that point where it won't matter. We're close to that point where it won't matter. Are we going to turn the wheel is the big question.
Yeah. We will see. I mean, if you were to follow Twitter in the last 48 hours, I think the honeymoon's already ending for Doge. So,
yeah, there's some of that. I've been watching that.
Yeah, unfortunately, I think there's some craziness there. So,
yeah.
Okay. So, I don't even know how we got down this road.
Yeah.
But bonds, bonds are going up.
Right. Or at least going to stay strong.
Yeah.
Interest rate wise.
So going back to this, you said something interesting, tax-free income.
Yes.
I think most of the people that listen to our show are real estate investors.
Right.
Tax-free is like one of their favorite.
That's
phrases.
the golden, golden goose.
Yeah. So what are we talking about when we say tax-free income?
Tax-free growth, tax-free access, tax-free to the heirs. The There are only two investments really that do that. Only one of them has tax-free growth and access. That's Roth IRAs. Most people understand if you do a Roth, you pay the tax up front, you put it in there, let it grow tax-free for life. Right. You can access it tax-free for life, okay? And you can pass it to the heirs depending on what's going on. Insurance works the same way.
Yeah.
So the money can grow if you, again, set up properly. You can grow the money tax-free. You can access it tax-free. You can pass it on to your heirs tax-free. People ask me how. It's really simple. Two reasons. One, since the income tax was invented back in 1912 or 13,
sometime around there, yeah,
something like that, death benefit proceeds from life insurance policies have been tax-free. And there's nothing out there to show us that that's going to change because that goes to widows.
Right.
That is a political third rail like you wouldn't believe. Okay. So that probably will never change. Secondly, when we're accessing the cash from the policy, going back to our example, remember, we put the money in the policy, right, to grow. It grows within the policy tax deferred, like IRAs and all those types of investments. Any qualified plan works that way. Where it's different is when you access it out of. If you access it out through a bank line of credit or a policy loan, both of those are loan proceeds, right? Are there any taxes on loan proceeds?
Nope.
Exactly. There's nowhere on the 1040 form for loans, is there? It's income tax return, right? So it's considered loan proceeds. How do you tax a loan?
Right.
A lot of people don't realize this, but this is how wealthy operate all the time. We've been talking about Doge. Let's talk about Elon.
Yeah.
Part of how he bought Twitter. Yes, he raised some bank money and all, but he also put up some of his own money, all right? And some of it he put up, he had Tesla stock that was valuable, right? He didn't sell the stock. That would be dumb. He took a loan against it. In fact, if you have assets like stocks and various things, I can steer you to banks that'll borrow loan against a investment portfolio. Now, they'll only loan 50% of a stock portfolio because banks understand it could lose half its value. Insurance policies will loan you 95% of the cash value.
Gotcha.
That's the risk assessment. They understand it's safe. My point is, as long as his Tesla stock grew faster than his borrowing cost, he's money ahead, isn't he?
Right.
This is how, Amazon guy. Bezos. How he gets by with not paying any tax every year. Yet he receives monies to buy yachts and multi-million-dollar mansions. He's loaning against his Amazon stock, folks. He's not selling it.
I saw one of those yachts.
Yeah.
He has a yacht that follows his yacht, I believe.
He does.
To supply the main yacht.
Oh, Zuckerberg does too.
Was that Zuckerberg?
I think it's Zuckerberg.
That was Zuckerberg. Yeah, Zuckerberg has a yacht that follows the main yacht.
Yeah.
And then
Bezos has four jets though, private jets.
Yeah, and then Bezos has, I was telling my wife about this.
Yeah.
This is what I want to do. She thinks I'm crazy. It's like he bought his house and then he bought the two neighboring houses.
Right.
And you think, typically when you hear something like that, it's like, I'm just going to have like this gigantic thing. He bought the two neighboring mansions to house all the people that take care of his property.
Right.
Man, dreams.
That's a big vision.
Yeah. But, like seeing what he's done, a lot of people that have been paying attention to my story, it's like, I stopped buying houses. I do this sales training.
Right.
I focus on that. And my intention here is we've incorporated it.
Right.
And the goal is to at some point have a valuation attached to it by a private equity firm or VC or whatever. And now I can start paying myself through loans.
Right.
I can avoid paying taxes.
That's how you do it.
Yeah. So see what these other wealthy people are doing. It's like, we should do more of what they're doing.
Do more of what they're doing. If you see 95% of the people going one way, go the other. Okay. Yeah. And if tying this all to real estate, it's really, again, quite simple. I tell people this all the time, where you take any significant purchase, whether it's a property, a vehicle, college education, I don't really care. You have two choices. You can take money that you've saved up to buy that asset or that item, whatever it is. Or, and by the way, here's the problem when you do that. Let's say you take the money to buy a house.
Yeah.
Okay, you got the house. That's great. Whatever it's going to do, it's going to do. But the dollars you traded out, this is called loss opportunity cost, another one of those financial literacy things, okay? I used to teach. When you trade the dollars for the item, what return do you get on those dollars in the future?
They're gone.
Gone forever, right?
Mm-hmm.
You pay them on a bill. Let's say you pay taxes. I get this all the time. I got a tax bill. Okay, you can pay the taxes to the IRS. Yeah, you paid your taxes. But the dollars you gave the IRS, will you see any benefit from those dollars ever again the rest of your life?
No.
You could apply that to a car, to a property, or any other thing you purchased or spent money on.
Mm-hmm.
That's what most people do. The smarter way is, why not instead put the money in the policy, earn dividends? Now, using taxes as a great example. When do taxes actually due most of the time?
April 15th.
Of the next year, right? So I had somebody the other day had a $40,000, $50,000 tax bill. They had about $100,000 to work with to invest. What if you put the money in to invest $100,000 and April, and you're going to earn 6% between now and then. By the way, I told them to do it after January 1st because it was so close. So now they're going to push it off to April 15th of 2026. They'll earn 6% on a capital gain of 50. They get a long-term capital gain 15%, right? It's all on a property. They're receiving the proceeds. They had a choice. I say take the proceeds after January 1. Right? You can delay the tax bill. All right. 15% long-term capital gains, right? What if you earn 6% over the next 16 months before you have to pay the bill? You just shaved your tax bill by a third.
Right.
Because you made 6 on it, right? Secondly, now you borrow it from the policy. Let's say you pick up 1 or 2 or 3% positive arbitrage on that money you pay the tax bill every year the rest of your life. What happens? You're going to get interest back. Eventually, the money you pay in taxes come back in your pocket.
Exactly.
So you can pay the tax and wave bye-bye to those dollars.
Yeah.
Or put them in a policy, let it work for you, and work for you at least partially the rest of your life.
Now,
that's the difference.
I learned about these policies, the whole life policy.
There's whole life, there's IUL.
With infinite banking and so on.
Right.
And for me, when I went down this road, I want to say in 2020, I had to make some commitments to like, hey, here's how much I'm going to put into my policy per month,
right,
for some duration. Some
work that way, not all.
What you're talking about is like, I have 100,000.
Boom.
I want to park it, get a return. So you're saying that's an option.
Yeah.
Hey, Disruptors. I just want to share that myself, as well as about half of the people on the show for Disruptors, are members of the Collective Genius Real Estate Mastermind, also known as CG. Now, I've been a member of the Collective Genius for well over 4 years now, along with about 700 other top-tier real estate investors that flip a combined over 50,000 homes per year. And I've personally made a ton of money and developed some deep, personal, lifelong friendships there. If you want to look behind the scenes of what it's like to be an esteemed member of this organization and how it's helped me scale, please check out cgmastermind.com.
Yes. So again, this is education, not only for average Americans. This is something that I've taught to CPAs, agents over the years. Most of them don't realize this. So there's 2 ways you can invest in these policies. The one you ran into where you're going to put in so much per month, per quarter, per year over a period of time, or what we call front loads, where you just dump a bunch in all at once. By the way, your liquidity on those are going to be about 80-85% day one. Now, why people don't do those, even advisors, agents, insurance agents, they'll say, well, that's what's called a MEC. If you want to look it up, it's Modified Endowment Contract, 1988 TAMRA tax rule. Okay. The MEC says if I put the money in, I can grow it tax deferred, but when I take it out in a policy loan or withdrawal, it's taxable.
Right.
All right. Well, here's the first thing I'm going to respond to that. If you didn't make an investment because it was taxable, would you ever invest in anything?
No.
Exactly. Almost everything you invest in, stocks, bonds, mutual funds, real estate, crypto, precious metals. When you sell it, most of that stuff, you got a tax bill, right? Income or capital gains. So not doing something because it has taxes because of gains is a really stupid reason not to invest. All right. But depending on the situation, you can also access through bank lines and such where you may be able to avoid that tax. You may or may not. But what's more important, liquidity or tax-free?
Yeah. So
now the ones you fund over time, yes, those are tax-free. You fund it over usually 5 years or longer. You have an account where you can access it however you want, through the policy loan, through the bank line, whatever, it's tax-free. Okay, that's great. Here's what I do for most people. I say, look, which is more important? They can't decide. Well, then let's do both. Could you put a chunk in one, use as an operating account, high liquidity, you're using it. Yes, your gains might be taxable at some point down the road, but so is every other investment. And you got another one you're building over time. That's a tax-free bucket of money the rest of your life.
So, and that was my experience. If I remember correctly, the liquidity sucked with the payment over time.
So this is where the other problem comes in. So think of a teeter-totter. Put cash on one side, put the death benefit on the other. Here's a problem I run into constantly. Insurance agents want to put in too much death benefit. You can adjust that teeter-totter significantly. I mentioned earlier, you do a front load, you should have at least 80% liquidity day one. You don't, it's not structured right. The teeter-totter's off.
Right.
If you have a multi-premium, we call it, where you fund it over a number of years, your liquidity should be about 2/3 day one or more.
Yeah.
If it's not, what's happening is they're not adjusting the teeter-totter most efficiently to maximize cash for you. Now, why would agents do that?
Potentially the premiums.
It's about commission. So, and the insurance agent doesn't get paid by cash. Cash is cash, basically. They get paid on the amount of death benefit. Teeter-totter? So if I double the death benefit, I just doubled my commission.
Gotcha.
I cut it in half, I just cut it in half. Where's the motivation?
The incentive is to have a larger death benefit.
So if I say to people, you're going to have 80% liquidity day one, that means I just cut my commission to 80%.
Gotcha.
Why in the world would I do that?
I don't know. Why would you do that?
It's simple. Volume. I'm blessed that I have a radio show. Our company has over 5,000 clients now. We've been around for 20 years. I don't have a shortage of people to talk to or reach out to me.
Significant reach.
Yes. Most financial advisors, agents, whatever, don't have that luxury. So they have a handful of clients, so they got to squeeze as much as they got to make the money they need to make.
Yeah.
So what I say to people all the time is if you have a policy where you have less than 50%, actually really, if you have less than 2/3 liquidity on it day one, regardless, it's not structured properly, I'm going to encourage you to contact me at yourpersonalbank.com at that point.
Yeah.
Because we'll run a head-to-head comparison. We can do a 1035 exchange. Your real estate investors understand 1031 exchanges, right? It's a tax-free, non-taxable event. We move the cash from one to the other. Now your money grows faster every year and more liquid.
Gotcha.
Tax, no harm, no foul. You're in better position.
And then as far as you were saying, the potential tax consequences.
Right.
Is tax consequences on the money you load or the entire gain?
Only on the gain. So if you do the front load.
Let's say hypothetically, I got $100K.
Right.
I do the front load.
Right.
And that $100K turns into $1 million.
You're going to pay the tax potentially on the gains only, not the principal.
So the $900 potentially in this scenario.
Right.
Gotcha.
There's probably not enough time in this podcast to share, but there's legal ways to legally avoid those taxes.
Well, I mean, I think I will make time to understand that.
Well, it gets into some advanced planning and stuff we can do. I mean, there's charitable things that can be done. There's all types of charitable trusts. There's a myriad of things. There's life ILITs, insurance, life insurance trusts.
Gotcha.
There's a whole myriad of things that can be done. So let me put it this way, Steve. If you say, hey, I got $1 million, I've got a $900,000 gain, we need to talk because there's some things we can do to mitigate that tax or at least minimize it, if not completely eliminate it. But again, you've got to talk to the right tax attorneys, and the right financial person.
The professionals.
Yeah, I can steer you that way.
Yeah. Okay. So we've talked about a lot of things so far.
Yeah.
Anything we've missed? We've titled the show, what the wealthy and the banks know that you don't.
Right.
Have we missed anything?
I think the big point we want to drive home, I don't think you've missed it. It's just positive arbitrage. The power of compound interest growing over time, even on money you spent. Think about it. Let's say how much does your household spend a year? Anybody who's listening, 50, 100K. I mean, depends on the household. And what benefit? That's what's called flow. There's another financial literacy concept. banks have flow, right? They have deposits coming in, right? And then they have loans going out. Okay, that's a flow. And do they make money on that flow?
I mean, they have money. They make money from lending it.
Yes.
Yeah.
Of course they make money on that flow.
Right.
Do you?
No, it's spent.
Correct. How would you like to start making some money on that flow?
Right.
In other words, this is a little more advanced concept. I don't usually start people here. We usually get them going, get it up and running. So they operate it, start seeing how this works for them. They say, hey, this is pretty cool. There's another common misconception. Let's do another one. I own 7 myself personally. I've done it my 13th year. Okay. So you build over time. My doctor, I just had lunch with him right before Christmas. He started 12 years ago, and he funded 5 of these policies over his first 5 years. He now runs every dime of money that comes into his practice through his 5 policies. He then pays his expenses out of that. Okay. And if he picks up just 1% even.
Yeah.
Think about it.
1% per year.
Per year for
Adds
life.
up.
Yeah.
Very well.
This is his 12th year. He's a happy camper. He likes me a lot.
Yeah.
I don't get charged when I see him.
So I'm sure you've talked to people.
Other than supplements. He's a naturopath. Other than supplements I buy from him.
That's pretty awesome.
Yes.
So I'm sure you've talked to people who wanted to game the system.
Oh,
right?
yeah. Absolutely.
So like we take the 100K.
Yep.
We front load it.
Yep.
We get a line of credit.
Yep. I know where you're
Or
going.
50K.
Yep.
And do it again.
Yes.
Right. I'm sure.
Yes.
If a lot of people ask you this question.
I've had some people that have done it, and I've done it myself.
Okay.
Okay. There's sometimes it works and sometimes it doesn't. What you're talking about is leveraging policies. Okay. And by the way, you can do 80% if you wait 1 year. So let's say you put in, using your example, you put in 100K, you wait a year, you borrow the 80K and use the money from that to fund policy 2 or the second generation, right? How many generations can you take that? As you want. Right. Now, 80% each time. Okay. So you're making more and more return on your money each time you do that. Here's the challenge. That works as long as the money you're earning is the same or more. Okay, it actually has to be a little bit more than what you're getting charged to borrow. When it gets to be the same, there's still some cost, there's some costs of insurance and stuff. You can get underwater just a bit. Okay. If your cost of borrowing gets up underwater, you're in trouble.
A lot of trouble.
Right. They keep it pretty even, to be frank, but so in other words, 24 of the last 28 years it's worked. Doesn't work all the time though. And that's what the people who, and I have some clients that do that. I've done some of that myself, but you have to go in it with your eyes open, knowing, hey, do you have other resources of other money for those 4 out of 28 years that ain't working? And how many generations have you gone? Because you might have to add a little bit more money in there during those years to keep everything afloat.
Why would you have to add money in to keep it afloat?
Because there's still some costs of insurance and stuff like that. So there's still, so you could be losing half a point or something like that. You know what I mean?
Gotcha.
So you got to be careful. What I say is it works. Yes, you can do it. You have to have a little bit of caution or have go in with your eyes open, knowing I've got to have some reserves elsewhere just in case, like this last year or 2 has been, where you kind of got to feed it a little bit to keep it going. Once the positive arbitrage comes back again, we're off and running again.
Right. Gotcha. Okay. That makes total sense.
Yeah.
So you were saying that what your personal loan is, we're comparing it to, I think the traditional personal banking we know with infinite banking and turbocharging it.
Yeah.
And the nuance, what I'm hearing here, the specific difference really is instead of borrowing from the insurance company, we're borrowing from the bank for a larger arbitrage.
Correct.
Got it. Okay.
Correct. And you've got 2 different entities. Now it doesn't matter. So that's when I did a workshop a month or 2 ago, where they were talking about the difference between, direct recognition, non-direct, and all that. It doesn't matter if the money's all there; it's just going to get paid. So what do we care?
Yeah,
we just want to put the money in the insurance company and leave it there and just let it grow. This pile just keeps growing. We peel off of it as needed from the bank. It's that simple.
Yeah, gotcha. And then somewhere along the way, you decided to start a radio show.
Yeah. So, gosh, about 2018 or so. So I guess we got to back up a little bit further. So, I had this, started my own company. We built it up. We were doing the traditional IRAs, 401ks, retirement planning, all that stuff, like everybody else there, the dinner seminars, all that. Our company was top 10 in dinner seminars here in Phoenix for several years in a row. And then 08, 09 happened. All that kind of just changed and went away. And one of my clients said, hey, you need to come talk to my aunt. She has this real estate group up in Seattle. I didn't know anything about that. I was like, why do I need to go to Seattle? Well, she's got this group. She bugged me for like 6 months. You need to talk to my group. And finally she says, Ferenc, you got to come next month. It was like February. I said, why do I want to go to Seattle in February? I'm in Phoenix. She goes, because next month I got the self-directed IRA guy and your deal's better and I know it and I don't want my people doing your thing or that. I want them to do your thing. Okay, Trish, fine. So I fly up to Seattle, really not knowing why or what I was getting into. I got 70 real estate investors in there. It's the largest real estate investment group in Seattle. She introduces me. She's a client. Like I said, she understood the personal bank, how it worked. I shared it. I get a standing ovation. I'm not used to that.
No.
I'm a financial guy. I'm talking about numbers and taxes and boring stuff, right? A lot of those people in that room are still clients of mine today.
Wow.
I saw them again just a couple months ago, spent some time in Seattle. It's great. But from there, they're like, hey, I know this group over here you need to talk to, and this group. Next thing I know is all word of mouth, no advertising. I'm traveling all over the Western, from Chicago West, speaking to investor groups, IRA groups, self-directed IRA groups, real estate groups, you name it.
Yeah.
Got to the point where I was like, I had to back off my schedule. I have a family.
Yeah.
I wasn't home, so started getting pickier. Somewhere around 2018, roughly, somebody who attended one of those workshops said, hey, you should be on Money Radio. What's that? I mean, I hadn't heard of it. I listened to it. So you need a show. And I know the manager there. I want to get you an interview. Okay. So I get on there. They want to do a 10-minute interview. It's a business focused kind of thing. The guy says at the break, can you stay another 10 minutes? This is awesome. I'm interested myself. Okay. I get done with that. The owner and the manager of the station said, we heard your interview. How long have you been on the radio? I said, this is my first ever. No way. I said, well, I've been speaking. Oh, okay. Shows. How would you like a radio show yourself?
Yeah.
Huh? They had a guy retiring, that kind of thing. Said, we love your content. It's unique. It's different. They've been there 30 years. In fact, that's where Robert Kiyosaki got started with Rich Dad, Poor Dad. The same guy, the owner of the Money Radios, who still owns it. He told the story. A guy walks in the book with this nobody had heard of in the late 80s called Rich Dad, Poor Dad and wanted to promote it. Yeah. That's where he started.
Gotcha.
Yeah. Anyway, I've gotten a chance to meet him. He still does stuff there occasionally. Anyway, started doing this radio show. At first, I was hesitant. I was like, where am I going to find the time? Talking to my wife, and it's like, because I'm traveling, I'm speaking, I've got clients, I got a family. She goes, it's a whole new audience. So I said, okay. A year and a half later, COVID hit. All the speaking stuff disappeared.
Right.
I'm on the radio now. And I'm thinking, that was a bit of a shock to the system, to our business, because I understand I'm in the financial world about 20 years at that point. Every single client I've ever met, I'd actually met in person, or at least at a workshop, before they became a client.
Yeah.
I'm thinking, how am I going to obtain clients without ever actually physically meeting them? The radio came in. People started calling, and the radio numbers just jumped. A lot of people started listening to the radio more. They're at home. Right. And then other stations, they added a second hour. They said at that time I was their second most popular show.
That's phenomenal.
Yeah. And I was at one of the newer shows, right? And so then other stations started reaching out to me. Hey, would you consider us on we heard your show, love the content. It's unique, it's different. And so now we're on over 20 radio stations nationwide. I'm 20 of the 30 largest markets in the United States.
That's pretty phenomenal.
Yeah.
Probably getting a little more business from that than
yes.
flying.
Yeah. And I don't travel so much.
Yeah.
That part's fun.
So you were saying they asked you to go up to Seattle because she thinks it's more important for her investor group to talk to you versus self-directed IRA.
Right. Because there's some limitations with self-directed IRAs.
So let's talk about...
I'm going to step on some... You want me to step on some toes?
Yeah, let's swing some baseball bats around.
All right. Well, as we all know, there's some limitations with self-directed IRAs. One of them is, the prohibited transactions. I'm sure you've gone into all that kind of stuff.
Very annoying.
Yeah. There are more fees, plain and simple. As I tell people, if you're going to do a self-directed IRA, you have to actively use it. I have a lot of people I see that have them and they kind of sit on them and they're just paying a whole bunch of extra fees for no reason, right? And then regardless of what you do, unless it's a Roth, you're ultimately, what are you doing? You're going to pay the tax eventually.
Yeah.
You're doing what the government does. You're kicking the can down the road.
Mm-hmm.
Now, one of the things about taxes, I'm not saying to avoid taxes. I'm saying to limit them and do it strategically.
Yeah.
All right, forget the politics. Right now, we are in the third lowest tax bracket in the history of the income tax. Coolidge was the lowest bracket. Reagan first term was second. And the Trump, since 2018 Trump, is the third lowest tax bracket in history.
Mm-hmm.
When do you want to pay taxes? When they're low or they're high?
When they're low.
Why are you deferring them when they're low?
Mm-hmm.
To then later pay them at a potentially higher level at an certainly unknown future rate. And yes, we're fans of Doge and all that, but what if all that doesn't work out as well as we hope?
Mm-hmm.
Well, are taxes potentially going to be higher in the future with increased debt?
I think there's only one direction it can go.
I don't think it's going down.
No.
To be fair. So my point is, why are you paying tax? Why are you kicking the can down the road to a potentially higher or worse tax situation than you have now? Why not pay the tax now strategically when it's low to let it grow tax-free for life?
Mm-hmm.
Why Roths are so famous.
Yeah.
Or so
Popular.
Popular. Thank you. So there's no positive arbitrage with self-directed IRAs.
Yeah. And there's a limit to how much you can put in there.
And limits on how much you can put in. There's limits on what you take out.
Mm-hmm.
There's required minimum distributions. And the Congress changes these rules all the time, right? I mean, I do this full time and I have a hard time keeping track of the rule changes year to year.
Yeah.
Okay. And so I can tell you just about every single client I know who is 72 plus now, who built a sizable IRA, traditional IRA, they are very unhappy campers.
Mm-hmm.
They're getting creamed on taxes.
Yeah.
Because now their Social Security is getting taxed higher rates.
Mm-hmm.
If they were receiving pension or other investment income, guess what? Because of the required distributions, they're getting hit higher tax brackets there. In fact, studies show the argument is you're going to be in a lower tax bracket when you retire.
Mm-hmm.
85% of the time, do you know that's not true? That's the stats.
Yeah.
The stats, Wall Street's run these over and over again. 85% of Americans, when they retire, are in the same tax bracket or higher in retirement than when working. Because guess what, folks? Social Security benefits are taxable.
Mm-hmm. And that's
among other things.
Relatively newer deal, right? I think that's like the last 30, 40 years.
1980s, that was Clinton administration.
Yeah. And then we're talking about insurance policies. Now, there's a very popular radio guy. I think he's got a bigger name than you.
Yeah, Dave Ramsey.
And he does not like insurance policies. And anytime someone talks about insurance policies,
he goes off.
He flies off a handle.
He does. Now, that should tell you something. He's responding emotionally, isn't he?
Yes.
So when somebody is being emotional, are they being logical?
No.
I've read his books, I've read his stuff. If you read the story, his mom got screwed over by a bad insurance investment. By the way, I would never have recommended that for his mom, the particular investment. So he has colored a paintbrush. The entire industry is bad because his mom had a bad experience with a bad product. It was a bad fit. In other words, she wanted to cut wood and somebody sold her a hammer.
Yeah.
All right. One of my pet peeves, and I've done this forever, there's no such thing as a bad financial tool. There are bad fits.
Mm-hmm.
Absolutely. I see that all the time.
Yeah.
They all have a purpose. Like I'll hear this all the time. People say, I hate annuities. Okay. Let me ask you a question. You have a recent widow who her husband had a pension. She counted on that pension. She now has a chunk of money she can invest in an annuity that'll create a private pension for her, and that's her comfort zone. Oh, well, that's probably a good idea.
Yeah.
Even people who hate annuities say that to me.
Yeah. That's what I was going to say.
Yeah, exactly, right? In other words, there's a time and a place.
Yeah.
There's a fit. My point is simple. If you if a financial person or any stripe says, I love this unconditionally, or hate that unconditionally, that's not financial advice.
Mm-hmm.
Probably doesn't apply to you, and they're responding to some emotional reaction they have. And as one of my biggest pet peeves with agents, advisors is, dude, the gal, it ain't about you.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the client.
Right.
It's about them. Listen to what they want. What do they need?
Mm-hmm.
What are their goals? And now let's find the tool, the hammer, the saw, whatever,
Mm-hmm. that'll
fit them. So sometimes annuities make sense.
Yeah.
Sometimes life insurance makes sense. By the way, you can buy life insurance far different. Life insurance will do a lot. There's 5 different kinds of life insurance. There's 5 different kinds of annuities. That's another thing. If you won the lottery,
Mm-hmm.
would you be upset?
Of course not.
That's an annuity.
Mm.
If you have a pension from the government, is that a bad thing?
No, not at all.
That's an annuity.
Yeah.
Okay. My point is there's 5 different kinds of annuities. Don't paint it all under the same brush.
Yeah, that makes total sense.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I guess Dave's got 2 really, really passionate things that he's really wrong about. That one and then the debt. Obstacle I hear from newer wholesalers is finding buyers for their deals. Because unless you've built a massive buyers list or have a huge dispo team, you might struggle to move your deals. So when we started working with InvestorLive, we've been able to reach new buyers and sell deals faster at higher prices. We can see buyers in our area, their contact information, and with the new AI capabilities, connect with the buyers most interested in our deals based on the algorithms. We can also see who's clicked on our deals, how many pictures they clicked on, and how long they spent looking at it, and finally, what actions they took after engaging with our deals. We are now connected with thousands of buyers in our markets, and we now know exactly where we are with each deal and what next steps to take. If this sounds like something that would resolve or help your dispo process, I highly encourage you, go to the website, put in Disruptors for 10% off so you can focus on locking up deals and less time worried, stressed, and frustrated about finding buyers.
Well, here's where I agree with him. In general, do you want to be out of debt? Absolutely.
Mm-hmm. Generally.
Yeah, generally speaking, debt free. I mean, that's a good thing.
Mm-hmm.
But I do a whole thing in my workshops where I talk about the difference between strategic debt versus consumer debt.
Mm-hmm.
There's a bit. If you have to go to work, Steve, to pay the bill, I don't care if it's a business, you're an employee, doesn't matter, but you got to go to work. So you're a doctor or you're a ditch digger. Well, that's the kind of debt you want to get rid of.
Exactly.
Because if you can't go to work, you can't pay that bill, you got problems.
Mm-hmm.
But can you buy a rental property, long-term buy and hold, take a mortgage against it?
Yeah.
And as long as your cash flow, your income is greater than your expenses, can you build wealth?
Mm-hmm.
Of course.
Yeah.
So I get these Dave Ramsey aficionados.
That's what I'm saying. Like, that's the other thing where he's.
Yes, I say
wrong.
that to them. So I say what I just shared with you right
Yeah.
there. They're like, well, yeah, you can do that. Well, then is all debt bad? No.
Right.
Stop painting things in broad brushes and saying, this is bad, this is good.
Mm-hmm.
No, it depends on the situation. The answer is, it depends.
Yeah. And I think that's what every accountant says is,
Yeah.
Hey, what do I do about this? Well, it depends.
It depends. And really what they're trying to say to you is, well, what are your goals?
Right.
What's your fact pattern? Term we like to use in our industry. What's the fact pattern? What's going on? What's your goals? What are your dreams? What are you trying to accomplish? Where are you at?
Mm-hmm.
Let's try to find. And sometimes I'll say to people who, they hear me on the personal bank show and they'll contact me. They're all excited about it and they want to do, they've been listening for months, sometimes years even.
Mm-hmm.
And their financial position and situation is not right now for them. Like they got a lot of debt, this and that. I say, well, here's what you need to do first. You're not ready yet.
Mm-hmm.
We'll get you there. You should do this or that first. Oh, and they get disappointed. I'm like, well, do you want me to tell you what you need to know or what you want to hear or what you need to hear? I'll get you there. You're not ready.
Yeah. Gotcha. And then you're speaking on.
Yes.
Tell me more about that.
So, John Burley, probably many of you on this show are
Been
familiar
here a
with.
couple times.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I was on. We become good friends. We were on a bank board together. Got to know John quite well, and he's been on my radio show a number of times too. And I've been through. I'm a Black Card member too. I've been through his training. He reached out to me about a year ago about doing a joint event together. I was honored by that. So we are doing January 18th, 2025. We're doing a Master Your Money, first time ever. The two of us. He's going to be speaking about 7 money secrets for the rich. Obviously all about real estate. Okay. I'll be talking about the personal bank, how you tie the two together to enhance your real estate investing. We're going to kind of tag team and then end up the day with a Q&A. So 9 to 5, go to yourpersonalbank.com to register. I would recommend doing it soon. We got a few more free seats available. And then after that, there's going to be a cost.
Yeah. So yourpersonalbank.com.
Yes.
And then if someone wanted to find you on the radio, where's that at?
Well, it's the best place is just, again, go to my app, Your Personal Bank app, or the yourpersonalbank.com website. You can go listen. You can listen to the current or any of the previously recorded shows anytime you want. Of course, it's on Spotify and everywhere else you can find. Just Your Personal Bank. And then, yes, we're on 20 stations around the country, terrestrial radio stations around the country, but it's on different times, different locations, and you may or may not be in that space.
The Spotify's easiest.
Spotify, or the website or the app.
Yeah. And then if someone wanted to reach out and do to work with you, what's the best way to do that?
Again, yourpersonalbank.com. And as I say on there, yes, you'll reach me, not an assistant. I had 45 people working for me at one time. And over the years, I've learned how to streamline things and specialize. And I just enjoy talking to people directly.
All right. Simple enough.
Yeah.
Before we end up here, what are some last thoughts you want to leave all the listeners with?
I think one of the biggest things is if you haven't realized it yet, everything has changed economically. We're in a different environment. Last decade was the decade that was known as easy monetary policy, low interest rates, the stock markets and real estate markets, crypto, you name it, just took off. We are now in the midst of one of the biggest bubbles in history. Take any measurement you want to take. We are at extreme levels on all of that stuff. Okay, that is a fact. Now, will it continue going up like that? No. Will we have a correction? Yes. What no one can tell you is how much, how long, or when. But there will be a correction.
Yeah.
I can share that with basically absolute certainty.
Yeah.
And this goes back to the 1950s tulip bulb. You know, there was a time in Holland that tulip bulbs were more expensive than a house.
Yeah.
Okay. This is not new. All right. Now, the message I'm trying to share people with is there's not a reason to be scared, though. Again, it's not new. This has happened before, and it's going to happen again. What do you do when you get a .com burst or an 08, 09 correction in the real estate and stock markets, which some are predicting? The numbers are certainly there could potentially support that. I'm not predicting it. I'm saying it could be. We could have a very severe correction. What do? You diversify. You protect yourself. If you've got assets that are investments that are subject to risk, dial it back. Start peeling some off. If you've had winnings, let's say you've taken advantage of this great run up in the stock, real estate markets, whatever, crypto, whatever, does it make sense to take some off the table? I mean, what do successful, wise investors do? Look at Warren Buffett. Warren Buffett has sold more stock in his career, both percentage and dollar-wise, over this past year than at any point in his 60-plus year career. That's a pretty smart dude to listen to and follow.
Yeah.
Okay? Last quarter, he didn't buy a single dime of stock. I don't think he's ever done that in his career. Warren Buffett's actions are telling us what's going to happen. By the way, he did the same thing before 08, 09. He did in 07. He also did it in 2000. Go back in charts and look what happened. 45, 55% drop top to bottom in the markets, stock markets, both of those times. Real estate, a lot of it suffered there. Real estate's going to have a correction.
Yeah, he's pretty good at, what's the word? The fundamentals.
Yes.
Paying attention.
Pay attention to the fundamentals.
Core fundamentals.
Right. Am I saying get out? No. I said take the winnings off the table, didn't I? Understand, get into the fixed asset market. It is the golden age. Get into the stuff that more in the bonds, as we talked about earlier. High cash value policies. By the way, it's the best time to buy an annuity in over 42 years because of the higher bond interest rates. They're now paying double and triple what they were just a couple of years ago. If you want guaranteed lifetime income, so if somebody says, I want a pension check, those are now paying companies are paying a 30% bonus up front for that. So if you put in $100,000 in one of those, and they'll give you an 8% increase guaranteed per year. So if you put in $100,000, a year later, you would have $140,000 available for a long guaranteed income or pension check for the rest of your life.
Wow.
It's the best time in 42 years. Or I have another company that will roll up the money up to 14% per year that you defer the income. Well, 14% per year gross, pretty strong, right?
Even that part alone is pretty good, let alone whatever
Yeah.
else is coming with
I
it.
got another one that'll do 20% upfront bonus and 10% a year. Okay. So it depends on when you want to. So if you think about it, in 5, 6, 7 years, you could double the amount of money you would, if you want to defer it a few years, double the amount of money you're going to receive for a pension guaranteed for the rest of your life. That's called a guaranteed income rider or a guaranteed income annuity.
Yeah.
It's the best time in over 42 years. So everything you thought about you thought was good the last decade, guess what? It ain't probably going to be anywhere near as good this decade. I shared earlier, all the analysts, JP Morgan, Vanguard, BlackRock, you name it, they're all projecting S&P 500 returns between 3 and 5% and significant corrections in the next decade. Wouldn't it be ironic? This is a thought I've been leaving with people. Wouldn't it be ironic if you put your money in a personal bank policy or an annuity or something like that, and you made 6, 7%, which is likely what you're going to, those guaranteed, tax-free, all that, and you outperform the S&P for the next decade? Because that's the most likely probability right now.
Yeah. Kind of hard to fathom.
You either evolve or you die.
Yeah.
Right? Whether it's business or investing or you name it. So I'm not saying it's all bad. What I'm saying is it's changed.
Yeah. Yeah. I mean, that goes back to what you're saying, the golden age.
Golden age of fixed assets.
Yeah.
So evolve.
All right.
Adjust.
Perfect. Well, thank you so much. I've learned a lot.
Awesome.
Appreciate having you on.
Thanks for having me on.
Thank you guys for watching. We'll see you guys next time.
Steve Trang. Jump on the Steve Trang. Disruptors.